he skipped it, he dissed it, he said it's a bore. But what if that film's got a little bit more? What if I don't like it? What if it's bad? What if it's awkward or lazy or sad? What if it's genius, a total surprise? What if it's gold when I open my eyes? We're watching the films you love to avoid. Now sit down and deal with your cinephile void. What if I don't like it? Let's get it spin. You might hate it or love it. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome to another mini episode of What If I Don't Like It. If you're not familiar with what a mini episode is, it's the first of the month and we're re-releasing something that was part of our season 1 of this show where we had 2 parts, a part 1 and a part 2. It was a much longer show in that format. And in part 1 we talked to the guests before they'd even seen the movie they hadn't wanted to see. And in part 2, just like we do now, we talked to them after. I'm recutting some of these longer episodes to have just part 2 once we talk to the guest after they see the movie they were hesitant to see, so we can go back and look at some of the stuff that may have gotten lost because we were just getting started and a lot of people didn't know who we were. Really quickly, this is Raiders of the Lost Ark. We talked to my friend Rocky Calsetta and we see why he may have not seen a movie that a lot of people have a lot of reference to. Of course, I'm going to be at the East Hampton Film Festival starting tomorrow. If you're watching this coming out, actually, it's the 1st, so it's today. I'm recording this tomorrow. I will be there doing the talk back about short comedies and then also doing the talk back with horror shorts. Go to easthamptonfilmfestival.com to see where you can buy tickets, to see what films they're going to be, to see the timing, to see everything. And of course, if you want to watch the whole version of this episode with its part 1, oh my God, there's a link right there and you can go ahead and click on it and watch the whole thing. And without any further ado, let's get in on there. So now we're back, having just seen it, although there's been a period of time, about a week since we recorded the first bit and the second bit. And you watched the movie right after the recording, is that correct?
Yeah, I watched it like right after. So then I took a week to kind of digest it, I guess.
This will be interesting because you're our first guest who has had some time between their response and recording to think about, like, not just shoot from the hip, as they say.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like, I'll go to movies a lot with people, and then like right after the movie, I'd be like, "So what did you think?" And I hate when people do that. You have to give me time to process it. You know, like I can't just process it right away. So I probably have a different opinion today than I would have a week ago.
I do that a lot with movies, especially like longevity. I've come out of a movie and been like, "That was amazing," and then I never thought about it again. And then I've left movies that I thought were kind of mid. And then I thought about them every day for like 10 days. And I was like, I guess that was a good movie because I'm still trying to chew on it.
Right. No, that's fair. I mean, there's some movies like, I come on, I'm like, wow, that's like the best movie I've ever seen, you know, like I saw 1917 with you, you and your husband.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was like, wow, that movie was just fantastic. And even now I think, wow, that movie is just fantastic. But
it was visually stunning, but I can't remember the plot. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, no, so he had to get to his brother, and he just had to go across the landscape of the war to get to his brother.
For some reason, my brain has recast that with the son of Steve Irwin as the main character. So in my brain, all the images I'm replaying has the Steve Irwin son. That's a me problem.
That is certainly a me problem.
Sorry to interrupt there.
No, you're good.
So what would you have said your opinion was right out of having seen it versus today?
I haven't seen it. I can get why it was such an epic in its time, you know, like why people like go back to it constantly. And certainly that started like some discourse when I mentioned like, hey, this is the first time seeing it. Oh, you have to see this one, this one, and this one. I got why people like it. I got why people enjoyed it. And I think had I seen it when I was younger, I would have had a profound love for it.
Interesting. Yeah.
But then like now, like a week later, really like think about it, really consider it. And then I'm like, you know, I can point out all the flaws in it. And it's not something that resonates now. So I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where you can appreciate something that exists but you don't personally like it, like the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, great example. Great
Yeah,
example. There's a lot of people who have dedicated their entire lives to that music and, hot take. I don't think either of us particularly care for it and have been definitely exposed to enough to have made our decision.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I love this movie. I watched it as a kid. I have a fond love of it. I watched it last night trying to have the viewpoint of someone who had never watched it before and was watching it for the first time in our modern society as the person that I am. And I will admit there were a lot of times where I turned to Scott and I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? You pointed it out the very first time you saw it. I have never even bothered to think about this. As soon as I saw it in the movie, I was like, what the fuck is going on? The submarine. What the fuck is going on with the submarine scene?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, like even that, or like just I appreciated the level of cheesiness that like this is just you have to suspend your belief, like that a whip cannot do that. A whip will not wrap itself around a log and then allow you to swing across, and then like how do you get it back once you're over there? How does that work?
Most important weapon. You didn't have your adventurer's bag with 50 feet of rope? What the fuck, man?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean honestly,
but also that gives us that very iconic line that, I've definitely fucked around with people and said this before. I mean, you can't say, give me the whip without me saying, give me the idol. So like, I'm torn between like, that was cheesy as an adult who is cognizant of how physics works, but I still remember loving it as a kid.
oh yeah, no, I mean like it's like one of those things you notice. You're like, wow, that's not how things work. But you appreciate it so much because, especially you, I'm sure, like being behind the scenes of movies, you appreciate that someone had some kind of really crazy idea. A bunch of people probably gave them shit about it, and then they made it work, and then everybody loves it. And I don't think there's anything more iconic than Indy's whip. So
Yeah, it's such an interesting, like, how many superheroes, well, I wouldn't say superheroes, he's like a hero, lowercase h. He doesn't have some sort of modification to his capacity that makes him above a human. But how many protagonists who fight have a weapon that is solely a whip? It's I guess a range weapon at times. Not really a great close range weapon, though.
unless you're Indiana Jones, because then it does anything you want it to do. So,
Well, he's got proficiency in it. So, like, for me, it would be 1d4, but I feel like he gets an extra dice roll on his whip because, he's like a level
okay.
20.
But he has some kind of modifier for it for sure. I mean, like absolutely. And how does one get proficiency in whip?
And whip, exactly, is that a subclass of, like, archaeologists that we just don't know about? Like, it's a homebrew?
Yeah, I mean something.
He definitely has a charisma modifier that is through the roof.
Oh yeah, I mean, how else could you possibly get somebody to have their friend, right, love you on your eyelids for you to blink in class for him to see that? And I mean, just exuding charisma. I mean,
Yeah. That scene is strange. It's one of the first, well, it's the first scene beat back from the very, very iconic Indiana Jones goes in and gets attacked by the giant boulder scene. And it was shot when the film was supposed to be, it was written when the film was supposed to be more of a Bond film and he was supposed to be more of a ladies' man. And so like it's funny, but it also doesn't really fit the rest of the film. And I've always thought that it's just interesting to know why that happened.
yeah, I mean, because I mentioned that, or you mentioned that he was a bit of a ladies' man, and it was more in this film than the other ones. But I can think of like literally two women that even were the least bit attracted to him, or that even existed in the movie. So, and it was the woman with the stuff in her eyes, and Marion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this movie doesn't pass the Bechdel test because two women don't talk to each other, let alone that they have a conversation about anything. But you have not seen other Indiana Jones movies. How would you feel if I told you that Marion is the most feminist, most self-actualized of all of the Indiana Jones women's, with the exception of possibly the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character? I have not yet seen The Dial of Destiny.
I would not be overly surprised, although I will say probably the most annoying thing to me in the entire movie was Marion and Indy meeting for the first time, or meeting again, I should say, at a random bar in Nepal. That was, like an Irish bar in the middle of Nepal. Okay. But they have this whole battle scene, and they're like, she's like this strong, tough character, and is like, no, forget it. Get the hell out of here, Indy. I don't want anything to do with you. And then, like, the rest of the movie, they put her in a fancy dress, and she's just like a damsel in distress. I have never seen character decay in such such a small amount of time.
Yeah. And I found myself, when you try and like reward a child, where you're like, you did it, great job, for like, oh, she at least fights back a little. She takes the frying pan and she knocks the guy out. She gets behind the gun and she shoots the Nazis. She does get hopelessly stuck inside the plane that it would 100% have blown up, because physically you can't run away from fire on gasoline. That's not how that works. But like, she tries, but she also always winds up dissolving into needing Indy.
Right. I mean, and even like the whole symbolism of a woman hitting a man with a frying pan, even for this came out in what year?
81. This came out in 1981.
Yeah, so even for 1981, I would say it's a
bit on the nose.
Yeah, like,
especially because they're like in Egypt, I think. Like, like you could have grabbed any number of things that were more likely to be on a road than one item you associate women with fighting with.
A magic lantern, anything.
I would have been less offended by something that like ethnically inappropriate than to be like, the lady grabs a frying pan, Of
course she grabbed the frying pan. So I don't know if that was just more like because it takes place in the past, if it was some kind of nod to that or something.
Yeah. I found myself trying to excuse stuff by being like, it's supposed to be said a long time ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you have to come up with an explanation for it, it's just not.
And it is the first in the series, so there's a lot of things where like they hadn't really landed on the character entirely yet. And I think we should mention this in the pre-part. Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote a really great script, just had like a couple of beats from Lucas about what this character was going to be like. And they're trying to make him like an Errol Flynn character. So I can understand he became a little tropey in that way. And so the Marion character would equally be kind of tropey. But I did pull up, fans have made an actual timeline within the Indiana Jones franchise of when the events would have happened in human time. So this movie comes out in 1981, but it's set in 1936.
Right. It's funny because as I was watching this and some of the Nazis are talking, it's like, wait, did that happen yet? Did that happen yet? So I'm like, I'm sitting here reading World War II history again. And I was like, wait, no. Like, was Hitler around in 36? Like,
And as an adult, you can't, especially for the two of us where we're like kind of persnickety about shit like that, to not have your mind go like, so wait, what? Wait, would that have? Okay, sure. And I found myself really pissed because if you know the franchise, this ends with him and Marion walking away, but you do know that they still have trouble and they don't wind up together. And you know that there's another movie after this with I cannot stress how different the feeling between Raiders and Temple of Doom is for me. It's kind of like the feeling between Alien and Aliens. Different director, same director, different writer. It's William Hyuk and Gloria Katz, who are a married couple. And here's my funnest fact of this part of the show, second half. They are the couple who wrote and he directed Howard the Duck.
I love Howard the Duck. That's probably one of my favorite movies ever. And the only instance of duck boobs I can think of ever.
Yeah. Howard the Duck is such a strange nut where, like, if you haven't seen it, you genuinely should see it. It is questionable in all realms of how the freaking hell did this movie get made, but you have to look into that mouth of madness. But it's very cartoonish, obviously. And so Temple of Doom is incredibly cartoonish. And the female character is like a cabaret dancer, singer, and she does nothing but scream and yell she might as well be tied to train tracks the entire fucking time. She's so annoying.
You know, it's funny too that I didn't. So Marion got introduced, and I was like, "Wait, who is that?" A minute later, I'm like, "Fucking Scrooged." That's the only other place I think I've ever seen her before was Scrooge, and Scrooge is one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of took me out a little bit, but it was good to see her in a different role where she isn't just Bill Murray's love interest.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, she's looking forward to love interest.
Yeah, we do get her again in Crystal Skull, older. Yeah, it was the 80s, if you were working, you were playing someone's love interest or possibly their secretary. But that's interesting to have, like, oh, she's from Scrooge, because most people are going to go the other way on that one.
Yeah, that's probably true. So I will say that I think one of the biggest things that annoyed me besides her character Decay was Indy's motivation. I never got a sense that he was motivated by anything. Not academia, not just adventure, not profit. I felt like he was just there doing this thing no matter what, but I never got a sense of like what the point of him doing it was. It wasn't even like could have been a religious thing, like he was trying to keep some religious thing out of other people's, or even like I don't want the Nazis to have this. It wasn't.
It's almost as flat as simply like, he's a good guy. He's a good guy, so he's going to do the good stuff because he's got to do the good stuff. So he's going to he's looking for the antiquity to put it in a museum. There's a famous line in the third one of them where him and his father are arguing over what to do with an important artifact, and then they wind up screaming the line, "It belongs in a museum!" And then he yells back to his father, who's quite old, "So do you." But this idea that I think the British National Museum says this a lot, and I have to disagree. We're taking this object to protect it for history. We're going to put it in our museum and make sure that it stays safe so that everyone can participate in your culture, which is a little bit like, we're stealing it, and because we don't trust you with your own shit.
Right. I mean, anything got to get that sense, like, especially from the beginning of the movie. It's like, why don't you just leave the golden idol there? I mean, obviously it's important to this culture.
Also, solid gold weighs so goddamn much. What the fuck were you thinking? That bag was never, you could fill it till it was so full, it was never going to weigh the same as, and obviously it doesn't.
I like how I love how he eyeballs it and just pinches them out. Because I thought it was ridiculous, but at the same point, I thought it was just so great, that it's got balls he needs to make.
It does have these repeated points of almost absurdism. Like, did he hold on to that submarine on top the whole time? Did the submarine not submerge? He's wet now, so I guess that's what that's implying. But it's like it adds, there's one of them where he's inside a refrigerator that gets exploded near a nuclear bomb, and he shoots through the air, but he's okay because he's in the refrigerator. And you're just like, this is, I guess, terrible and great at the same time.
I mean, for sure. I really appreciate those kind of things because it happens so much in 80s movies. I mean, you think about the amount of abuse that any action star took in the 80s and in their movies, and then they just have a limp at the end or something like that. Or they just wince when someone puts alcohol on it, and shot 50 times, but they're good.
Especially movies with Jean-Claude Van Damme, because that was physically dangerous. You never know.
Especially the ones with his butt too.
Great list. Yeah, so you're right, because at the end of the movie, spoiler alerts for people who haven't seen this movie and are listening to us at this point, Ark of the Covenant opens up and it kills everyone who's looking at it. And I think either Scott or I turned and asked, so the wrath of the opening of the Ark, is that because it was moved from its holy place? And so it's killing all the Nazis because they did that? But then isn't Indy specifically more responsible for having moved it? Is he really without blame?
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I didn't think about it. I was more focused on what ghosts are these? Who are these spirits? Who are these people?
I have to assume, from having read the Wikipedia article on the Ark of the Covenant, that these are the souls of people the Israeli army vanquished while using it. So the pictures of it shooting out lightning and, godlike stuff, to quote the movie. That's how the army would have, like, any army carrying this succeeded because it would have carried it around and it would have attacked all of their, adversaries. But also, I'm giving a lot of answers that are not given in the film.
So it's just basically spirit guardians and Indiana Jones.
Well, I think that now it would also be Nazis. So, like, now the Nazis were killed by the ghosts seeking whatever revenge for
Nazis in the Ark of the Covenant.
So they got sucked back in. So if we did Ark of the Covenant 2, Electric Boogaloo, and we opened that up, we'd have Nazis again. That must be what happened in the United States right now.
When opened the Ark?
The last look for the Ark was in Ireland.
Wow. I didn't know that was actually even a thing. To tell you the truth.
They did a non-invasive archaeological study until 1995. A guy named Connor Newman, thinking that they had found it, and they didn't. They didn't.
They didn't find it. I don't know how it ended up in Ireland anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't actually know that was like. I mean, you hear things like like the Shroud of Turin, and I guess they're looking for Jesus as a spirit at one point in some movie, and.
Yep, that's the current one, the Dial of Destiny they're looking for. Yeah. There's a lot of religious items, I guess, because Kasdan wrote from like his experience on this. His orthodontist would regale him with stories of the Ark of the Covenant when he was younger, to distract him, because getting braces in the 50s or 60s not super great.
Right. Again, braces, and he's just like, yeah. So these spirits come out, and they actually could be Nazis. You never know.
Well, you can always tell kids ghost stories as long as it's biblical. You don't want to get in trouble and just make shit up and be like, ugh.
I know. I like telling children stories. It's like, yeah, there was this old man and his two daughters got him drunk so that he could get them pregnant so they could continue on the line. The classic biblical yarn.
Oh, yeah. Well, begodding is fine. Having sex is inappropriate. Begodding, totally fine.
Yeah, totally fine.
Just to go a little bit to the Marion issue, did you catch the line when he and her are meeting in the bar for the first time and she says, I was a child?
Yeah.
I looked it up. So somebody did the timeline, like I mentioned. And to be fair, the events in 2 happened before 1. The timeline is actually 1935 is Temple of Doom, 36 is Raiders of Ark, Last Crusade is 38. Crystal Skull is 57 and Dial of Destiny is 1969. But they also do the math for when everyone is born and his father. And so, like, he would have been born in 1899, which means he would have been 26 when he met Marion. And he was working as the protege to her father, who was an archaeologist. Marion would have been 15 when the events happened. So when she says child, when I've seen this in the past, I've just kind of been like, she must have been like 18.
Right.
When she doesn't. And he's not like 17 to her 15. He's like 25, 26. And that's a protagonist, and they didn't have to write that line in there. What the fuck?
No, they didn't. And I imagine they didn't know at that point. But again, 1981, I feel like the attitudes were still a little different then. We had Joan Jett writing about a 17-year-old, there was a lot. The Scorpions put out that album with a new child on the front cover of, in that same decade. So I feel like the attitudes were a little different. But that I heard it, and like hearing it with my 23 years, probably it would have hit differently if I heard it in the 80s or something like that. But still, I was just like, how much of a child was she?
I've seen this movie so many times, and I've never heard that line until this viewing, where I was like, oh, shit, child? Why would you say that? How much of a child? What's going on? Because then the rest of the film is framed around for me, like, everything that she does when she starts to act like a damsel in distress and her character starts to decay or regress, starts to feel like, oh, geez, is this woman regressing back to the child that she was when she was groomed or maybe misabused by Indy to whatever non-intended degree or subconscious degree? We are trying our best to be like, but he's so charismatic. And don't get me wrong, I love this movie, But the inclusion of these bits are just like, wait, why? Wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And it's certainly a reflection of the time as well. I mean, I really can't wrap my head around, we've got you kidnapped here, but I have this very specific fancy dress that you need to put on.
And every dress she puts on when she starts putting dresses on is what color?
Wow, you stumped me.
No, white. Keep putting her in these amazing, like very high femme white dresses. And again, it's the 30s, so you're like, I guess that's what, but like they don't have to be fucking white. So she's almost virginal, which we know she's not, because at the beginning she's almost like a man with the drinking contest. So, like,
Yeah.
what was costumes trying to say here?
Like, you could have had a damsel in distress character, but you could also had a strong female character that actually doesn't just turn into a damsel in distress, you know? And that's actually a really good point. I wasn't even like thinking about that either. Like, she's just going toe to toe with this guy in his drinking contest, and she's like totally fine, you know? Like right after that.
They bring it back up again with the Swedish or French guy, where she's doing another drinking contest.
Right. And it's like, wow, this woman has balls, for lack of better phrasing. But and then like immediately she's just like carried out in baskets. They somehow switch, even though the camera follows the basket the entire time. I mean, like, and then she's just getting kidnapped, and then she's just stuck in these situations where Indy needs to save her.
And like up until then, she's been successfully operating this bar in Nepal for however long, but
Right.
she truly has a regression of character upon seeing this guy from when she was a child.
Right. It certainly didn't make me feel good about the movie, you know, like I'd assume that like be like most typical 80s, the 70s, 80s movies and that way, but they started so strong with her, you know, and I was like, cool, this is kind of like subverted my expectations. And then immediately after that, literally like a scene later, it's just all that gusto is gone, you know.
Which is impressive because people love Indiana Jones for him being a subversive hero at the time. He wasn't super big. He wasn't super buff. He kind of messes up sometimes in a fight. And that's funny because you relate to that a little bit more. Like if he gets punched really hard, he stops and gives a little bit of a like oof to the camera. Yeah. So why not have the female be a little different too?
Yeah, at least. Also, and like I'm thinking of the scene where they're in where the map is, and yes. Marion gets thrown in there, and like literally, like he just goes through one wall and he's outside already.
Yeah, the Nazis didn't figure out to go through that one simple wall. Also, a lot of goofs in it that I literally own a poster of deviant art created from that particular scene that I love, and you can't get anymore because the artist got sued. LucasArts does not like when you make stuff of their IP. So I adore that scene, but I always wondered, how come the Nazis, it's just one room over from another room? Or it wasn't that bad at all.
Yeah, and like the part that confuses me is that they're on a hill of sand, and then he pushes through the wall, and it's like you're in some kind of pyramid.
Yep. Yeah. And also, what the freaking hell they're not all asps? I don't gotta be a herpetologist to know that that's a lot of different kinds of snakes that might not all really be indigenous to there. And why are there snakes inside a closed tomb that has no food for them?
Right.
Just chilling.
I mean, so a lot of them were actually legless lizards. So I was like, I was looking at that, like, and I was pausing it, like, wait, that's not actually a snake.
No.
But I do enjoy things like that where it's like that doesn't make any sense at all that this thing could exist in there and not have a source of food.
No. And be so many of them just being like, we're all on top of each other. And then he goes and even in the scene where he puts the stick down to find that, if you're just, if you're paying attention as an adult, you're like, fuck, why? I wish I was a kid again. Because in the prior scene, they talk about how the staff on the one side of the medallion, it says a unit size that's roughly 72 inches, which is about 6 feet tall. But on the back, it says to take away a certain amount, meaning that it is less than 6 feet that the staff needs to be. We then watch our Indiana Jones pick up the staff to find the location. And maybe I'm not aware of the fact that Indiana Jones is supposed to be 5'1", but that staff is palpably taller than him.
Dude, I was actually going to bring that up, that the staff was taller than Indiana Jones, and it was supposed to be shorter. Also, I don't know if like you really thought about this at all, but he's supposed to put it in there at what, 9 a.m.? What time, what day of the week and what month of the year, because that sun's not going to be in the same position all the time. Like how do they not figure that out? Like how are they there at exactly the right time? Which,
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could argue that. I suppose you could argue that they were there at the specific time that they were supposed to be, but they certainly didn't tell the audience that.
They yada yada over certain stuff, but I mean, like the yada yada. He's on top of the submarine. Don't ask. We're there. It's fine. But yeah, you're just like, wait a minute. As an adult, you're like, this is the whole concept of Stonehenge. It's a calendar sun situation. Yeah. So you kind of wish you were a little bit, more naive. And if you watch this as a kid, you can hold on to that naivete and not be like, well, it's fine if the staff is taller than him, but you made a whole point of the last 10 minutes of you telling me how tall the staff is.
I mean, I feel like you could probably just use some power of deduction there too. That probably the area right in front of the staff, there's going to be nothing in because it's not going to cast a light directly down. And you could probably generalize the area where it probably would be. And I mean, the area they were digging was what, like 50 feet away from where we found it?
And they don't even notice them digging until they are like, it's sunlight. Like, how did you not notice we didn't send a crew to go dig over there?
Yeah. Or, I mean, and you'd have to have a pretty good crew to dig through sand. I mean, it's sand. It'll literally just roll back into wherever you just cleared.
Yeah, I bet. So as a fencer, anytime fencing is in a movie, I am livid. It's often like not even the correct equipment and barely the correct posture or barely the correct anything, with the exception of The Princess Bride, which actually does a really great choreography, and every reference to fencing masters is a real fencing master. I bet that archaeologists, even though this movie probably made an entire generation of archaeologists exist, are pretty fed up with the misconceptions of things like, yeah, you just dig a little, then you broom it off. There's a hole, go inside.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and I don't know if I missed it or not, but like there was like a million holes in the ground there where you can stick a staff.
Mm-hmm.
How did you know which one it was? And also, why was the one it was covered in sand if they literally just stuck a staff in there right before to find the spot?
Well, I think I'm going to attempt an explanation. Because I do agree, like, if the Nazis were just down there using that area, why is there sand all over everything? Shouldn't they have cleaned it off? Maybe sand came back in. It's windy. It's sandy. The one hole that he didn't put the staff in kind of felt like they had something in it previous. And then there was one hole back. And, like, maybe that was, no, because I was going to say they said to take a unit off, but it's off the height of the thing. So take a unit off to bring it close. I don't know. It looked super cool. And as a kid, that is just like, and you're right, the sun doesn't even move that fast. So when he puts it down and the sun like lines, like that's how the sun moves in Elden Ring, where it moves so fast. I think somebody's standing behind me, but that's not our world. That's Elden Ring.
Yep. Yeah, it's not like one of those, you can't time skip, you know?
But I feel like we're talking a lot about the things that didn't work for us. What are some of the things that did work for you? I know I generated a piece of art for you for fun because I just got a pen for my laptop and I've never had a pen for a computer before. And so I made a drawing of our top men working on it.
Yeah, top men. Actually, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I am quick to point out flaws in movies, and I like trying to think about it from an adult perspective. I mean, doesn't always mesh up because these movies were made for a certain demographic.
Mm-hmm.
They're not made for you to sit there and analyze them. Which, I mean, Steven Spielberg, I feel like because we put him on such a pedestal, then he is kind of ripe for criticism, but still. I enjoyed the overall like feel of the movie in that like a lot happened. You know, like you never had a minute where you could kind of relax. You know, it was just kind of there was so much going on at every point, and I enjoyed that. It kind of pulled you through in that way, and of course Harrison Ford is just, I mean, he's Harrison Ford, so I'd watch him do anything.
Yes, and he's at his like youngest, peakiest. Like he'd been acting for a while, but this is when he starts to really hit for audiences. He's right off of Star Wars, like perfect. It was supposed to be Tom Selleck. I think I said that previously, and so I got to watch this movie imagining it be Tom Selleck, and I just would not have digged it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, Tom Selleck was great in the roles that he was in, but I don't know that I necessarily see him as an action star. And it's funny because I get Burt Reynolds and Tom Selleck mixed up all the time. And it's because of the mustache for sure, but
Yeah,
I mean,
benchy enough to be indie, but not like relatable.
right. So I mean, it's just kind of, I think that because he has that kind of young quality to him, or I don't think Tom Selleck has ever had a young quality to him. I don't think that he's ever had like almost like a boyish face. I think Tom Selleck came out with a mustache. Like he came out of the womb with a mustache, like that's just him. So I mean, like so you get that kind of like Harrison Ford being so young and charismatic in that way that like, he's just this youthful guy stumbling through all these things that you can kind of enjoy it more. But I think, yeah, if it was like someone like a Tom Selleck, you wouldn't have gotten that as much. Plus, it would have made the line, "I was just a child," feel a little different.
Yeah, Tom Selleck was not only born with a mustache, but born at like 40.
Yeah, exactly. He's been exactly who he is for, I mean, like even now, like he's on that show Blue Bloods, I think. He doesn't really look much different. He just has less hair.
I mean, go with what works for you. He was, I guess he was the older boyfriend on Friends to Monica. I
Right.
would have maybe felt a little bit better than that.
I mean, he's probably the same age as her at the time, too. He just looks like an old man.
Yeah. And he was pretty established as like, obviously he'd been playing Magnum PI for so long. Because a lot of people talk about the impressive nature for Harrison Ford to be both Han Solo and Indiana Jones. Most people get to be one pretty big iconic character. I think maybe because the films came out so close to one another, people didn't feel like he was Han so much that he couldn't be Indy. Although, hot take, are they not the same guy?
It's funny too, like, and we talked about this a little bit, and he talked about the John Williams score. So the Indy and Marion theme and the Han and Leia theme start exactly on the same three notes. They are pretty much exactly the same character. I'd say that Han Solo is a little more morally ambiguous.
Fair. Your space cowboy.
Yeah, but I'd say that they're pretty much same character. I mean, Indy could be a younger Han Solo.
I really do feel that because Indy is always, he's going to do the thing that is morally right. He's the good guy. But Han Solo can sometimes be like, he'll get cajoled into doing the right thing, but, he's in it for the money or maybe something else, or this is quite an inconvenience for him.
Yeah. I mean, he's certainly a more jaded Indiana Jones, But fundamentally, I think they're the same character. Balls before brains, even though he's a top archaeologist.
He's not a top man. He's a top archaeologist. I do want to talk about the John Williams score, though. That's a great bit of trivia. Thank you for that. I enjoy, obviously, the Indiana Jones theme song with swelling. It's iconic. It's iconic to the level of Jeopardy, where you could hum it to get people to understand the meaning of the situation that you're in. Yeah, it's a little Leonard Bernstein-y at times, too. It's definitely like, you're going to feel this now.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And I think that I appreciated it thinking about it in the terms of like 1930 or 40s cinema, that it is very over the. I thought about it in terms of the Lone Ranger, yes. So you can go like a little further than that, where it's just like an iconic orchestra swell or anything like that. But the amount of horn used in his, it was just over the top. I love brass sections so much, and I think if done well, they're just so amazing. I mean, I can think of like all the horn sections in composer with David Lynch, Angelo Bamentelli. I probably pronounced the last name wrong, but so beautiful and serene. But then like this is just like having, the scene in Robin Hood Men in Tights
Yeah.
when the king sits down and they blow a horn directly into his ear. That's all I could think of when I was listening to it.
The same. There was one point where it was, I think that maybe it's just before she gets put in the basket. The use of clarinets was so right in my ear that I turned to Scott and because we were watching it together, and I said, huh, clarinets.
Yeah. It's like, who's this, Squidward Tentacles?
It's definitely good to know that if you're a clarinet player, you can look to this score for some assistance.
Yeah. If you're a clarinet player, I mean, pick a different profession.
First of all, that can't be what you're doing for your entire job, but good on you. You stayed with that. It's better than the recorder, so
Yeah, that's fair. You can play hot cross buns on the recorder. I mean, like, you're a superstar, and if you graduate the clarinet, then good for you. Maybe try a flute. Flutes are wonderful.
mix it up. Try something new. Other things that you liked from the movie, like how did you feel about the scene with the whip versus gun?
Oh,
whip versus.
So, like, being like a movie nerd where I'm always looking up facts, I did know that, like, Hans I'm calling him Hans, Harrison Ford.
Harrison's.
Yes. So he was suffering from food poisoning, and he came up with the idea for the gun as a response to that, just so he didn't have anything else to do. And I think it's perfect, and it's perfect as an allegory for what we do in these countries when we come in and colonize them. That they have their best defenses, and we just show up with more firepower.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that was like the intended reason for it, but it does work in that way. Especially, like, we're coming to your country to take these things from you, so we can stick them into a museum and charge people to see them.
Yeah, you can attack me with your like 12th century technology. Here's some 19th century technology. Yeah, it does have more of a meaning for the audience than simply the fact that it was created. It's also one of those great movie facts that I think a lot of people get to hear, like the one with the food poisoning on the Titanic.
Right.
It's out there, it's in the ether. It makes the movie so much of what it is in that scene. And also there are some takes adjacent that particular scene where you can see that Harrison Ford's shirt is like so soaked through. They're like, it's hot there, but it's like food poisoning level of sweaty.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that, like, that scene is so iconic that it's wormed its way into other media. And I think, like, the best example I can think of is probably in Troy, when they roust Achilles up and get him to this battle, and there's this giant bulking guy, and he just comes up and just stabs him once with a sword, like, through his neck and into his sternum, and then it's done. There's probably a few more, but I'm like kind of drawing a blank on it. But I really do like that scene a lot. I wish it lasted a little longer. I wish they made the guy with the sword like a little more of a, like, foreshadowed his presence in some way.
Yeah, I guess for Harrison's sake, it was as short as it was.
Yeah, for his sake, for his health.
We'll take his side without you. It's fine. But yeah, all the action scenes, it did have a very good pacing feel. Like there was action, there was talking, action, talking. You didn't have to immediately open with almost action, so you don't have to wait for it. And watching the movie Bad Boys that I recently watched, like, I can't believe how much talking there is in a movie that I was like, well, at least the action will be good. Give me more action, which is not usually something I scream at a movie. This one had good pacing, and I felt like when we were given action scenes, they were rewarding and not cheesy. Like, it was good stunts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did actually. I found out in my studies while watching the film that it was originally going to be rated R because of the face melting with the Ark, and the way that they subverted that was they added more fire. So, like, you had the scene at towards the end where it was very violent, especially with, like, I love the way Spielberg shows corpses, because they, like, come towards the screen and they have those sound effects with them as if they're screaming at you. And I can remember that being the same in Poltergeist with the pool scene.
Yeah.
So, like, I do love that, and it feels very classic horror to me, and that's enjoyable. But so, like, I enjoy that it got a little gorier, and they actually had to tame that back. so that they could have a more public release of it.
Yeah, I think if you talk to anybody who saw this movie as a kid, the ending scene was pretty burned in their brain. A little traumatizing because it was right on the edge of like fucking scary scene for a kid you might take to a PG film. It reminded me of the librarian ghost in Ghostbusters, which is
My favorite one.
that comes right at you. It stuck with me for a very long. Like that was the scariest scene in a movie where it happens right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask you this because we touched on it a little bit in the beforehand, where we were talking about Nazis.
Yes.
Like, oh, like they don't say anything about Jewish people until like towards the end. There's like one line, and it was the Nazi commandeer who's just like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with this Jewish holiday or something like that.
Tradition, yeah.
Jewish tradition. And so I'm watching it, and like I knew that like you had said that, and I was kind of just waiting for it to happen, and then like it did happen. But I almost feel like it was totally unnecessary for that to happen.
Okay.
We know what Nazis are about, and we know how they feel, and I almost kind of wonder if it just like Nazis can just be bad guys without having to say anything. They're Nazis and they're bad guys.
Yeah, and like there was definitely room to, in a movie that has all of these Nazis, to say the word Jew or Jewish in the story of the covenant, because it is the Israeli army. It is it's Moses who brings this down from the mountains to the Jewish people. And yet, like, they jammed it in because they literally were told, you've got to put this in. And I believe they were pretty far into filming at that point. And they're like, I don't know, put it fucking here. Like, it's amazing how it sticks out when, if they hadn't said anything at all, probably I wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because like they're just, it's kind of like thinking of like Adam Sandler's The Wedding Singer. Drew Barrymore's husband to be was just like, he was a dick. He was a shitty character.
One note.
And then he has him like cheat on her. You don't actually need him to cheat on her. He can just be a dick.
Yes.
And that's kind of the way I felt about it. It was just like, if they had mentioned Jewish people like throughout the movie, especially considering the Ark of the Covenant, it wouldn't have felt fine. But like to just mention it that one time, it just felt like you were just trying to drive some kind of point home, and it really just kind of pulled me out because I'm like, I mean, yeah, we know that about Nazis. Like Nazis are bad people.
I know one fact about Nazis. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you didn't really need that to be said, or like there was a million other places that you could have even mentioned it. I mean, especially being in the Holy Land, like especially, I mean, yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, Nazis in Egypt, certainly like a thing too, certainly Nazis took over parts of Africa. That's also like,
and Nazis looking for antiquities. I mean, that's part of so many movies. Is that one with George Clooney, The Something Men, where they're looking for antiquities that the Nazis, because they literally stole all of these antiquities while they were taking over countries. So like, right. We get that. Like, it's not even that they hate Jewish people, that they're coming from the Ark of the Covenant. They're coming from the Ark of the Covenant because they're coming for everything.
Right. So, I mean, like either mention it more or don't mention it at all. Like, we don't really need it.
Yeah.
But it really did take me out of the film. And I don't know if it's because we had talked about it beforehand. I mean, that could be it. But also at the same point, it felt like just shoot in, which was like also surprising, especially from Steven Spielberg, who gave us one of the greatest Holocaust movies ever made. So.
Yeah. Maybe he wouldn't have done that if it had not been for the lack of Jewish people. Hot take right now.
Maybe that line wouldn't exist
in this film.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just it felt like lazy writing. I mean, of all the things that you could have said about Jewish people too, like I don't know if I'm comfortable with this Jewish tradition. Like you could have,
or not.
Yeah, you could have had one Jewish character and had him scoff at him or something, like or anything, literally anything.
Yeah, but. Yeah, and in a situation where you didn't have to. I guess As we wrap up here, I'm going to ask you these questions that I ask everybody, 2 questions at the end of our interview. Did you like this movie?
I did like this movie, and I know that I've criticized it a bunch, but I did enjoy it.
I think that that's something that's really hard for a lot of people who know me to understand, that like I can still thoroughly enjoy a movie, but also be like, here's 10 points where the plot was garbage. I think one of my husband's friends, who's going to be on an episode later on, Jesse Sterling Harrison, created a kind of graph that I refer to a lot about movies and music, which is that you can have a x-axis of artistic credibility, and then you can have a y-axis of enjoyability. And often, the further you get on one, the farther you get from the other. And so one of these kind of Indiana Jones movies are not exactly super far on the artistic, integrity side, but they're pretty high on the enjoyable side. And you're going to enjoy eating Doritos, even if they're not entirely healthy for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that you can see something as objectively being bad, but also enjoy it. I feel like that's fair with a lot of movies we probably watched as a child, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is the movie I'll die on a hill about, you know?
Yes, I feel that way about The Last Unicorn. I will die on a hill about this movie, but I'm thoroughly aware of how many times people were traumatized by the amount of boobs in it.
I mean, that is fair. Actually, I did watch that when I was with my ex and her youngest. And I was like, "You got to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie." And I'm like, "Wow, I didn't realize how many boobs are in this movie."
People being smushed into boobs. So my second question is, would you recommend that people who haven't yet seen this movie see this movie?
Yes, I would actually recommend it. I don't think that a lot of people haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I would certainly recommend it to people because it is, again, such an iconic movie that even if I don't feel as though I'm going to continue to watch any more Indiana Jones movies, I feel like I got my fix and I'm good. I'd still suggest people see it.
Yeah, I firmly believe that of all the Indiana Jones, if you were going to see one, this is the one. If I had to say see another, I would say The Last Crusade, especially because chronologically within its own time period, Crusade comes after this movie. And I really love the action in Temple of Doom. I mean, they made it into a Disney ride. It's compelling. Ke Huy Quan is in it as a young actor. He talks about how much Harrison Ford was amazing to him and influential to him as a young kid and as a young actor. So you can get all of that. That being said, the female character I think either is dating or winds up dating and then eventually marrying Spielberg, who's a very thoughtful person and a wonderful actress outside of this, she ruins the movie for me. But Crusade has Connery in it, and I know you don't mind him, and it's got a lot of kind of like funny bits in it. So yeah, if you were going to tell people with kids to see this movie, because probably kids are going to be the people who haven't yet seen Raiders, what do you think is the ideal age to see this movie?
I mean, that's a really, really good question because I think you probably suffer this too, that we watched a lot of movies that we shouldn't when we were a kid. And
the rating system was still kind of shaky when we were kids.
Yeah. I mean, Airplane is rated PG, but there's still nudity in it, you know. So, but I mean, with that said, I do think that this would serve really any age group. I don't think that they're for a kid's capacity to understand what's going on. I don't think it's even really all that necessary because there's a lot of cool action sequences and there's a lot of like just cool set pieces. So, I mean, I think kids as young as 3 could probably enjoy it.
Yeah. This movie reminded me of The Princess Bride a lot. I mean, the set pieces, for example, that set piece at the end with the Ark of the Covenant coming out reminded me of the Cliffs of Insanity. And you know, it's very like styrofoamy stone quality, but I don't care at all. And I do think that that's a movie that's accessible at pretty much any age because it's good versus evil. And I think you can be pretty young to understand and go with a movie like this guy's the good guy, that guy's the bad guy. Let's see what fucking happens.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, the one reason I would recommend it, I mean, to anybody across the board, is honestly the scene with the hanger.
I'm so glad we talked about this.
And I forgot to mention it, but that scene alone, I was like, when the Nazi walks into the tent and pulls out the stick with the chains, and everybody kind of like looks and gasps, and it turns it into a hanger and puts it on a coat, was like probably the best unintended comedy I've ever seen in a film before. So that alone, I think anybody should watch that movie just for that maybe 15 seconds of film.
I truly like it could feel like a weird beat of comedy in that scene, but it gives you just enough relief. I had forgotten about it, and so when it happened, I truly laughed out loud again, like a child. I was like, "Oh God, that's so great!"
It is so good. I mean, I enjoy like the straight man comedy where like, like you take something so deadly serious, it turns out to be very, very comical. So I'd probably watch the movie again just for that one scene.
And he looked so much like a blend between George Costanza and Sean Wallace that I like. It really hit for me. All right, before we go, any final thoughts? Anything you wanted to say? I mean, besides that awesome reminding us of the hangar scene, which is clutch.
No, I mean, I think we really tapped on everything I really could say about it. It's not a very dense movie, It's very, you could easily separate these scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, this happened, and it's like, so it's almost like it was right in a formula.
Yes, I think a lot of times in the 80s that would be the case, but it's also nice because it's concise. And I think right now we're living in a time period where a lot of our movies are pretty bloated, and a lot of our stories are told in like 1.5 hour episodes of a miniseries. So it is a little nice to just be like, it goes from point A to point B and makes the obvious stops and gets there in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that there was anything wasted in the movie. There was certainly scenes that were questionable, but everything served the point, and it got to that point, and the end it felt like a cathartic ride. So as much as I'm like probably not going to watch any more Indiana Jones movies, I can still like look at it and be like, this is fundamentally a good movie.
And the last question. I said there were two, but there's actually three. It's a secret last question, which is, we ask you, what if you don't like it? How do you feel now having seen this? Do you feel like your reservations were reasonable, or kind of like, well, I just didn't want it because I thought I already had seen it enough in clips of other things?
Yeah, I mean that was my reservations about seeing it was just kind of like something you mean to get around to, but you just don't ever do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably some kind of German turn of phrase for that because they have a good turn of phrase for everything.
Yeah.
But some people like don't watch things and then, or they don't like things and they wear that as like kind of like their badge of honor, like, oh, I didn't watch that show, like people like are like, I didn't watch Breaking Bad. I don't have time for Breaking Bad, like.
That's bad. Like, I've never seen any of the Twilight movies. Categorically bad, but come on.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, but I never really thought about it in that way. It's just I never got around to watching it, and so the reservations I had wasn't so much like, this is stupid, and you're stupid for liking it. It was more just I didn't grow up watching it, and I just never got around to it, and it's just like become this big juggernaut of a franchise, and I'm like, well, I've never started it, so why would I start it now? So I'm glad for the opportunity to excuse to watch it.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your willingness to come on the show and, like I always say, categorically watch something that you weren't sure about watching and then chat with us about it. That's a really awesome way to be.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're gonna end it right here, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Welcome to the corrections and omissions portion of the show, where we put on our archaeologist hats and go digging through the rubble of our own accuracy. This one's for our Raiders of the Lost Ark episode with Rocky Calsetta, which didn't originally air with corrections and omissions. We said some smart things and also some things that need a second pass, so let's go ahead and address them right now. Correction number 1, the Ark and a dentist. So I mentioned that Lawrence Kasdan came up with the idea of using the Ark of the Covenant in the film's plot because of something his orthodontist told him. I had the story half right and also attached it to the wrong guy entirely. The real story is Philip Kaufman, who helped George Lucas brainstorm the initial story for Raiders, was the one who suggested the Ark. Why? Well, because when he was a kid, his dentist, not his orthodontist, used to tell him stories about this terrifying holy object that would shoot lightning and smite enemies. Apparently, that stuck with him through decades of plaque removal and narrative development. Kaufman left the project early to go work with Clint Eastwood, but the Ark stayed, and because it was his contribution, he still gets a story by credit. So yes, a dentist truly gave us cinema's greatest face-melting relic, and no, Lawrence Kasdan was not part of the dental trauma lore. Correction number 2, the Nazis in Egypt in 1936. Now, Rocky brought this up in the episode, and it's a really good question. What exactly were the Nazis doing in Egypt in 1936? Well, the answer is they weren't there. Historically, Nazi Germany didn't expand militarily into North Africa until 1941, which is 5 years after Raiders is set, and that happens when Rommel and the African Corps enter the scene. In 1936, however, Hitler was still consolidating power inside of Germany, so having the Nazis out in Egypt, just kind of in the desert, running digs and chasing supernatural relics, that's purely pulp fantasy. Which, to be fair, is exactly what Raiders is. It's not trying to be a textbook, it's drawing from the 1930s and 40s serials that inspired Lucas and Spielberg in the first place. But if you're the kind of nerd who reflectively fact-checks timelines, this one's going to stand out like a red flag waving in the Cairo heat. Now, number 3 is also a clarification. Rocky and I talked about how there's the scene where it seems like Indiana Jones just clings onto the outside of a submarine and yada yada, he gets where he's going. Well, some other people have noticed this as well, and they've done some great deep dives and pointed me to the original script, which does have a scene that addresses this, and some photos of them trying to film this. It did get scrapped because it was too hard to film and not worth the time. But in the original script, what Indiana does is he starts to climb up the submarine as it submerges. And some people have pointed out that like submarines don't have to go completely underwater to get where they're going. And although the Germans in this scene are saying dive, dive, so the submarine is going down, what Indiana does is he takes his bullwhip and ties himself around his waist to the periscope, and using that and his own strength, he holds on as the sub goes. And you just see, like, it says there are sharks that start to pop up around him, and he's like, oh no, what am I going to do? But they don't attack him. He just holds on, he grits through it, and it starts to actually fully submerge when it gets where it's going to at the island, and Indy gets torn off of it and stuck in this cavern where there isn't any air, and what's he gonna do? And you see this whole like swimming scene where he bursts through to an air bubble and sucks a little bit of air in and has to get back to where the submarine. There's even a minecart chase here, which you can see Spielberg wanted his minecart chase. He gets it in 2. He tried to put it in 1. Long story short, they did try to address it, and they did wind up cutting it out, and I have to say, I actually feel better with the yada yada version. Number 4 is also a clarification. This is Marion's theme versus Han and Leia's theme. Rocky brought up a cool detail in the episode, that Marion and Indy's theme sound just like Han and Leia's theme from The Empire Strikes Back, and that they even start on the same 3 notes. And emotionally, yes, but musically not quite. John Williams, he does this beautiful thing where he repeats motifs across different stories. You get big sweeping strings, classic orchestral builds, warm brass. Both of these themes feel connected, and that's because they use similar instrumentation and emotional rhythm. But if you break it down note by note, the melodies diverge after the opening phrase. So they aren't musically identical, but they definitely live in the same neighborhood. Williams is basically the emotional sound architect of every Gen X and millennial childhood, and this is a great example of why. Number 5, another clarification. Who are the spirits in the Ark? So we had a moment in the episode where we were like, who are the spirits that fly out of the Ark and melt all the Nazis? Are they ghosts? Are they angels? Are they like every person that the Ark has ever killed? Great question, right? The film never really answers it. But if you go into the behind-the-scenes lore, Lucas and Spielberg were thinking divine wrath incarnate. They aren't specific ghosts or souls that were vanquished, they're just a visual representation of like Old Testament God anger. So, like, less Casper with a grudge and more you mess with a sacred power and now you're going to be smoked. It's a big symbolic supernatural judgment. That said, we would absolutely watch a sequel called Revenge of the Ark. Nazis inside. And keeping on with this theme, number 6 is also a clarification. And this is about the Bechdel test failure. We touched on this during the show, but I really feel like it deserves more emphasis. Raiders of the Lost Ark doesn't just fail the Bechdel test, it doesn't even come close, guys. Marion is the only woman in the movie with a meaningful speaking role. There are no scenes where she talks to another woman. There are barely any scenes that feature other women at all. And while Marion, starts out as this badass bar-owning, hard-drinking, pan-wielding icon, the movie quickly turns her into a damsel in distress. She's even put in the white dress, and we talk about that. She's carried in baskets. She's locked in tombs. And the powerful, independent version of her that we meet in Nepal, that version just kind of disappears. Now, of course, this is not unique to Raiders. It's a pattern in a lot of 1980s adventure movies, but it's a bummer, especially because Marion had the potential to be so much more than the one girl from the franchise that they could make Happy Meals out of. All right, guys, that's it for this week's corrections and omissions. If you catch something that we missed or just want to debate whether or not Indy should have been punished by the Ark, don't forget to slide into my DMs or email me with the subject line, Top Facts. And that is it for this mini episode of What If I Don't Like It? We took a look back at part 2 of our Raiders of the Lost Ark episode with Rocky Calsetta and finally gave some overdue love and side-eye to the submarine scene, Marion's character arc, and Indy's somewhat confusing motivations. Thanks for taking the trip back with us. Of course, if you want more of my film takes, follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Movie Runtime, and that is, of course, where you'll get more commentary, chaos, and film nerd tangents. Coming up for the show, though, the next full episode of What If I Don't Like It is going to drop on the 1st, so hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss out. I'll be appearing at the East Hampton Film Festival running May 1st to the 4th, and I'll be hosting a couple of filmmaker talkbacks. This is, of course, East Hampton, Massachusetts, not the United Kingdom. I'll be hosting the Offbeat Comedy Shorts on Thursday, May 1st at 7 p.m. at the Abandoned Building Brewery, and I'll also be hosting the Horror Shorts on Saturday, May 3rd at 10 p.m. at City Space. If you missed my recent appearance on Mass Appeal Live talking about this stuff, no worries. You can catch the full segment on my YouTube channel right now, and if you're watching on YouTube, it'll even show up at the end to click on. Tickets for this event, the East Hampton Film Festival, are $15 per screening and are available at easthamptonfilmfestival.com, but seating is limited, so really grab your tickets early. Some of these venues are kind of small. It's really, we call it intimate. Of course, until next time, if you don't like it, well, talk about it anyway. You might just change your mind.